There is a pipe that costs $2. It pulls clean, cold water from the ground, permanently, not for a season, not until the parts wear out, permanently, no electricity, no pump, no monthly bill, no permit, no plumber, no utility company with a meter on your wall deciding what your water costs this winter. $2 of steel pipe driven into the earth, water rises to the surface on its own, through atmospheric pressure alone, the same way it has risen for every civilization smart enough to use it. Homesteaders used this system to survive droughts. Civil War field engineers drove these pipes into riverbanks and supplied entire regiments with clean water in under an hour. The United States Army Field Manual from 1917 dedicates 14 pages to the exact installation method you are about to learn today. Then American Waterworks Association did the math. The municipal water utility industry in the United States generates over $148 billion every year. American Water, Essential Utilities, and Middlesex Water collectively billed over $6 billion in residential water revenue in 2023 alone. A $2 pipe that gives any homeowner permanent access to clean groundwater is not a product to celebrate. It is a revenue stream to eliminate. They did not stop teaching this because it failed. They stopped teaching it because it worked too well. This is the story of the Driven Point well, the water system that armies trusted, that settlers survived on, that your great-grandparents built with their own hands in an afternoon, and that a $148 billion industry spent decades making illegal. Welcome to Ancestral Hacks. If this knowledge matters to you, the subscribe button and the bell are how you make sure it survives. Here we open the vaults they thought were sealed forever. Now, let me take you back to where this begins. Long before the first water main was ever laid, humans understood one fundamental truth. Water moves through the earth, constantly, silently, everywhere. The ground beneath your feet right now is saturated with water. Beneath your lawn, beneath your driveway, beneath the parking lot. Geologists call it the water table. Every civilization that survived without running infrastructure called it something simpler. They called it life. In ancient Persia, engineers called qanats cut horizontal tunnels directly into hillsides. They intercepted the water table. They channeled groundwater into villages using nothing but gravity and carefully angled stone. Some systems still flow today. Roman engineers studied the Persian method and brought it west. Medieval European villages drove wooden poles wrapped in iron banding. By the 1400s, artesian well technology had spread across the continent. Common knowledge, ancestral knowledge, passed from generation to generation. Then the American frontier refined it to its most brilliant form. West expansion put millions into landscapes with no rivers. Civil engineers with the Union Army developed a simple modification. They attached a hardened steel cone called a drive point. The cone had small perforations screened with fine mesh. Water entered freely. Sand and sediment could not. You drove the pipe into the earth with a hand maul, section by section, coupling length to length as you went deeper. When the drive point hit the water table, groundwater immediately entered. You attached a hand pump to the top, primed it once with a single gallon of water, and water came up. That is the entire system, a screened steel cone. Total materials cost in today's dollars less than $40 for a complete working installation. The drive point alone costs $2 to $8. The Army published this method in 1882, again in 1901, again in 1917. Unlimited water, forever. Your ancestors knew this. Before I go further, I spent months going deep, gathering ancestral water systems. All of it is inside the Ancestral Hacks Vault, the atmospheric water generator that pulls clean water from thin air using nothing but salt and sunlight. Deep beneath the soil lies a secret that utility companies spent 30 years trying to erase from the American consciousness, a secret of total independence. Between 1950 and 1985, a systematic suppression of ancestral water knowledge occurred. The goal was simple: to make self-reliance illegal and billing dependency permanent. In the 1930s, every rural hardware store carried the tools for freedom. The Driven Point well was the backbone of the American homestead. During the Dust Bowl, when the sky turned black and the ground cracked, those with the knowledge of the Earth's deep veins survived. But the landscape was changing. The Rural Electrification Administration brought power, but it also brought the end of manual independence for millions of families. In smoke-filled boardrooms, corporate executives drafted model legislation. They weren't just building infrastructure. They were building a monopoly on your most basic need. By 1981, 41 states had enacted regulations that made the simple $2 driven well a legal nightmare, requiring permits that cost thousands. Earl Whitfield saw it happen firsthand. In 1971, a health inspector flagged the well his grandfather had driven into the Tennessee soil 50 years prior. The 1974 Safe Drinking Water Act was the final blow. It reclassified private water sources, effectively erasing the 1917 Army manuals from public shelves. But the physics hasn't changed. The water is still there. Today we reclaim that knowledge. You can build this system with basic hardware store materials. First, consult a geological survey to find your local water table. You are looking for sandy soil, ideally within 25 feet of the surface. Assemble your kit: a 1¼ inch drive point screen, galvanized steel pipe sections, a drive cap, and a heavy-duty hand pitcher pump. Thread the point tightly and position the pipe vertically. Use a heavy hand maul. Every strike must be steady, controlled, and perfectly centered. As the pipe descends, you will feel the resistance change. When the strikes become easier, you have breached the aquifer's ceiling. Attach the pitcher pump, prime the valve, and pull. This is the moment where 50 years of corporate suppression finally meets the truth. Clear, cold water, not metered, not taxed, and not controlled. This is the water of your ancestors, returned to your hands. Independence isn't just about water. It's about breaking the architecture of dependency. Take the first step and reclaim your resources today. The full guides and historical manuals are available now. Click the link in the description to start your journey to utility independence. Remove the drive cap thread on your pump. Pour 1 gallon of water into the cylinder to prime it. Work the handle. Within 10 to 20 strokes, water begins rising. That first surge from the ground costs $2 of steel and 90 minutes of your afternoon. Run the pump for 5 minutes to clear sediment from driving. Test the water with a $15 basic test kit. In most rural and suburban areas, shallow-driven wells produce clean, cold groundwater requiring zero treatment. No filter subscription, no delivery truck, no meter on your wall. During the February 2021 Texas grid failure, families with hand-pump-driven wells had running water throughout the crisis. Their neighbors paid $800 for emergency water delivery and waited 4 days for it to arrive. Your ancestors would not have waited. They would have driven a pipe. The Persians engineered groundwater access 3,000 years ago. The Romans scaled it across a continent. American homesteaders perfected the driven point system and survived the worst drought in recorded American history with it. The 1917 United States Army taught soldiers to install it in under 2 hours. American water and essential utilities billed $6 billion in residential revenue last year, depending on you never remembering that. The Waterworks Association spent 40 years drafting legislation depending on you believing water access requires a licensed contractor. Your monthly water bill depends entirely on you never once walking into a supply store and asking what a drive point costs. $8. That is what it costs, $8.90. They buried the manuals, they rewrote the regulations, they turned ancestral knowledge into a permit violation. But the water table beneath your land has not moved 1 inch. The geology your great-grandparents relied on is identical to the geology beneath your feet right now. The $2 pipe works exactly the same way it worked for the Union Army in 1863. This knowledge was made invisible by corporations that understood one truth: a person who controls their water cannot be charged. Your ancestors controlled their water every single generation before yours controlled their water, until 40 years ago, until a lobbying association decided that ancestral self-sufficiency was a threat to quarterly earnings. Ancestral Hacks exists because that knowledge belongs to you. It always did. It was never theirs to lock away. If this vault changed how you see the ground beneath your property, subscribe and share this video right now. Every share is one more person who remembers. Every subscription keeps these vaults open. The next vault opens soon. Inside is the one thing every household throws away every single week, that your great-grandmother used to eliminate every pest, every fungus, and every weed on her land permanently for free.